Hi, and welcome to our segment. I'm Christina Wynn. I'm one of the producers here at Pittsfield Community Television, and my guest, for a few minutes anyway, is Amanda Drain from the Berkshire Eagle.
Hi, Christina.
Thanks for being here.
My pleasure.
So, Amanda, I really was very curious to hear a little bit more about you and your background. And interesting, off the air, you said that you hadn't always dreamed of being a reporter.
It's true.
So how did you get started?
So I did always enjoy writing. I didn't see writing as a viable career path because I had practical-minded parents who felt like I should take a more lucrative career path, as most parents encourage their children to do. So I went to UMass and I switched my major a lot. I tried communications, English, philosophy, sociology, music, before realizing that I really needed to figure my things out. So I decided to come back to the Berkshires and go to Berkshire Community College, where I took a bunch of writing classes. And I didn't do it knowingly. Those were the classes that I kept picking: poetry and creative writing, English, and just came to realize I was really enjoying these classes, and I got really into writing in colorful and fun ways. And at the same time, I started dating my boyfriend Wayne, and he's not white, and there were a couple instances in which I realized that he has a different experience in the world, and I started thinking a lot about how I could use my skills to show people what it's like to walk in someone else's shoes, and it was an aha moment.
That's a pretty big deal. I mean, when you say that you were at UMass and you switched your major so many times, to finally be able to settle on something that you felt really good at, that must have been a really satisfying moment for you.
Yeah. I decided after 2 semesters at BCC that I would go back to UMass, and I did it with a vengeance, and I went back and finished in 3 semesters, waitressing full-time to pay the bills, and I did it.
So how did you go from UMass, where you had sort of decided, I'm going to be a writer, to working now as a reporter at the Berkshire Eagle?
While I was a student at UMass, I got hired to do some writing and photography for the UMass website, and so that was a pretty good gig. They paid me $20 an hour to practice my writing chops and learn photography on the job, and I did that for a little bit, and at the same time tried to build a freelance rapport. I freelanced for Mass Live, and then in 2014, I graduated in 2012, and in 2014 I saw an opening at the Valley Advocate, and I applied there, and that's where I worked first.
Wow. And then you came to the Berkshire Eagle how long ago?
In September.
So still new, but you've been in the Berkshires for most of your life. Is that fair to say?
I've lived in Western Massachusetts all of my life, and I am from the Berkshires, yeah.
So what's it like to cover your hometown in many ways, right? Whether it's Western Mass or Pittsfield, or what's it like to report on your own community that you've known since you were a child?
It feels good. It feels good. I really know this place, and so I know its strengths and weaknesses, and even though I'm still relatively new at the Eagle, it felt like it fit really well because it was a place I knew. It's a place I know, and I mean, reporting is all about knowing your community and knowing what they care about. And so, that's an evolutionary process, but it's easier to do when you have so many connections in a community.
Absolutely. So, thinking back to even the first jobs that you got as a reporter, is there a story that really sticks out for you that you're really proud of, or that was really just like a unique experience?
Yeah, the most in-depth reporting project I've done, for 6 months I spent working on a series on undocumented restaurant workers in Northampton. It was a Hampshire County area story, and I worked in restaurants for 9 years. It's what paid my way through college, and so I met a lot of undocumented workers along the way. But when I heard one of them say, there was this restaurant fiasco in Northampton. It's very, very much a restaurant town.
Yes.
And there was a report released by the UMass Labor Center that said a lot of, it said negative things about the restaurant industry and the way that it was treating restaurant workers in Northampton. And so there were a lot of questions about that. The restaurateurs were up in arms. There was more information needed. There were numbers, but no one really knew what was behind the numbers.
The context, sure.
And so I started talking to restaurant workers, and I had a lot of those connections from working in the industry in Western Massachusetts. And I started hearing something, that restaurant kitchen workers in certain restaurants were systematically making less than minimum wage. And that hadn't been my experience. In my experience, the undocumented workers that I knew were making the minimum wage, which, by the way, in Massachusetts, regardless of your immigration status, the law is that you make minimum wage.
Right.
That way, the bar doesn't move.
Yep.
Because if anyone makes less than minimum wage, then that affects the bar for everyone.
Absolutely.
And so that was shocking to me that someone was telling me that people in Massachusetts were systematically making below minimum wage, and then I started hearing that some of them were also kept in worker housing as part of that deal.
Wow.
And some of that worker housing was really questionable. One worker told me he shared a living room floor 6 ways. And so I realized that this is a story that needed to be told. And it was really difficult to tell because these were vulnerable people who didn't want to lose their jobs. And so
they're undocumented, so they already have concerns.
Right, exactly. So their concerns were big, and there were multiple. I started building connections and talking to them, and trying to, basically waiting to see if they would feel comfortable. Mm-hmm. And then the restaurant that they worked for suddenly closed, and they had no job on the line, and they were very angry that the restaurant closed with no warning. And so I got to, at that point, realized that the timing was good, and they were brave enough to let me follow them to New York City, where they used job agencies in New York City. There's this network of job agencies in New York City that undocumented workers use to plug into jobs all over the country, or at least all over the East Coast. And so I got to see that in action and kind of follow that trail of what it's like for an undocumented restaurant worker to go and try and find a new job, and getting the bus ticket, the one-way bus ticket. And
wow. Sounds like your experience was really compelling, and you've built a lot of trust in your really relatively short time being a reporter, so it's great that you've had that kind of experience, and it's even better that you're now back in the Berkshires. So I'm getting a cue from our good friend Paul over there that we're going to wrap it up. Okay. So thank you for being my guest today.
Thanks, Christina.
Again, Amanda Drain from the Berkshire Eagle, and we'll see you again soon.